What's up, everybody? My name is Ralph Amsden, and I am co-host of the C-Town Rivals podcast. If you have ever listened to a C-Town Rivals podcast before, you know that this is a show that covers high school sports and alumni news for the city of Chandler, Arizona. We talk Perry High School, Chandler, Basha, Hamilton, Valley Christian, Arizona College Prep, Seton Catholic, all these different schools, high school athletic interviews, game results, analysis, and then every once in a while we'll interview people who have gone on to play in college or the pros. We've been bringing it to you for 6 years, and this kicks off our 7th season of the C-Town Rivals podcast. Now, if you've been with us for a long time, we were part of ctownrivals.com for the first few years, the website that was also dedicated to covering high school sports and alumni news in the city of Chandler. And then we moved on to being part of the Rivals Network at ArizonaVarsity.com. The C-Town Rivals podcast has a new home in its 7th year as part of ArizonaSportsCast.com, a network of podcasts that cover sports in the state of Arizona that I launched just about a month ago. So I'm really excited to have a new platform for the C-Town Rivals podcast. Thank you to everybody who has been a longtime listener of the show. If this is your first time, welcome aboard. The format for today's show is going to be a little bit different. I had planned to get together with Brett Quintyne and Chilly to talk some basketball, as almost every team in the city of Chandler is qualified for the upcoming state playoffs. But we had a huge development in football as Chandler High School, who has won 4 of the last 5 state championship games at the 6A level, has picked their new head coach to replace the outgoing Sean Aguano, who is moving on to Arizona State University. And that choice is Rick Garretson, the offensive coordinator / passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach, who has been with Chandler High School since 2010, and before that, 16 years at Servite High School in the Trinity League in California as an assistant coach. Really excited to talk to him today. It would not be a C-Town Rivals podcast, however, without some feedback from Brett Quintyne and Chilly. So I was able to get each one of them on the phone, and coming up right after our intro music, which is Chandler, Arizona's own Reform the Resistance. If you were used to our podcast, you're used to our intro music. But coming up after the intro music, we will hear from Brett Quintyne and Chilly in separate interviews about what they think of the Rick Garretson hire. And we will go right into an interview with Rick Garretson himself about his history, his philosophies, and how he plans to take Chandler High to the next level, if in fact there is one. So let's do it. So we had planned to get the C-Town Rivals crew together for the debut of the 7th season of the C-Town Rivals podcast, the all-new C-Town Rivals podcast, part of azsportscast.com. We're moving on up. But we had a big earthquake-level event happen, and Rick Garretson was hired to replace the outgoing Sean Aguano at Chandler High School. Chandler High School having won 4 championships in the last 5 years at the highest level of Arizona high school football. I figured it would be best if I got Chilly on the phone and we talked a little bit about this process, this hire, what it could mean, and then ultimately we'll play an interview for you with Chandler High was nice enough to give us kind of the first crack at talking to Rick Garretson, who we've known for years, about him taking the job at Chandler High School. So Chilly, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Fresh off the Periscope last night, where I kind of talked about the Rick Garretson hire and talked about, the ability that you had to get the first interview with him.
Well, I mean, he's a good guy, and I think he understands what we're trying to do with the C-Town Rivals podcast and what we've been doing over the years. He was very complimentary of you, and how you appeal to the kids, and just our overall focus on doing it for the kids. I think Chandler made a really good choice, probably the best available choice. What's your initial gut reaction take on it?
I love it. I know that there was like a handful of coaches that Chandler could have selected from within the program and outside of the program. Obviously, they have to open it up. A couple names that I heard that were thrown out there were like Coach Zuby and coaches like that. And internally, obviously, they're loaded with Richardson, Chick, and Garretson. And I absolutely love that they went within. Retaining the Ohana mentality, the Ohana culture. I absolutely love it. And we also got to keep in mind how influential a lot of the former students, former players from Chandler were after I tweeted out, some coaching prospects. Bryce Perkins, Deontay Sykes, even Daryl Garretson. I know there's a relation, but, man, there were so many people that were advocates for him.
Well, here's the deal. He's really had the keys to the kingdom for the last 3 years. He's been there since before Aguano was given the head coaching job. While, Jim Ewan's one of the people that brought him on. He had 16 years of coaching experience at Servite in California. Obviously, we covered his son, Daryl Garretson, at Chandler High School. But he was given the keys to the offense, has a fantastic offensive staff there, with Chris Chick, Chad Carpenter, guys like that. But they've had 3 top 10 national offenses in a row. In talking to Principal Larry Rother, one of the things that factored into the decision was, we could have, we think it's important to open this up to anybody who might be interested, but it's very possible that we have the best candidate in the country to keep this rolling right here in-house. Do you think that there was anybody better?
I mean, better in terms of what is something that you really have to ask. Like, I honestly got to say no, because I think hiring internally was the move. If there was an external candidate that was going to get hired, I guess I would have been privately lobbying for maybe Zuby from Higley or maybe a Farrell from Highland, based on what I've seen done over the past few years. But internally was the way to go. And Chandler had this unique position where I really feel like they were in full control. They didn't really have to succumb to the pressure within or outside to hire a certain person or personality. This is something that, I know that they have a 5-person panel, and they were able to do this on their own. And man, they couldn't have gotten a better fit for that head coaching position. I'm kind of curious who the new OC is going to be.
So they went internal when they brought Aguano on the first time, and it feels like, even though Larry Rother, the principal, wasn't there, they did go internal last time. It worked out for them. This is a staff that sort of works on collaboration. Yes, Sean Aguano was in charge, but, everybody is able to bring things to the table on this staff, and they have. And Sean Aguano being open to that is one of the reasons that they've been successful. One of the things that Rick Garretson told me is that every single person that applied for the job from within Chandler High School all sort of had that private agreement that we are all happy to work for each other. And I mean, to me, that shows the health of the program, the health of the coaching staff. Do you think there's a possibility that they could lose a step, though? I mean, not only are they replacing a head coach, they are replacing one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of Arizona high school football, a running back that had maybe the greatest season in that region's history. Do you think that they'll have the ability to keep pace with what they've been doing the last couple of years?
Based on the way that they train, based on the farm system that they have there, based on the way they've been able to retain coaches, and the fact that you just brought up, I didn't even know, or I didn't even hear that all those guys are willing to work for each other. That speaks volumes about what they got going on over there. They have to replace Jacob Conover. They have to replace DeCarlos Brooks. But, not that Jacob Conover and the Carlos Brooks are easily replaceable pieces. I want people to keep in mind, though, that by having Garretson and having the rest of the coaching staff intact, they've had to replace very, very good to great quarterbacks repeatedly. This isn't the first time, from Hundley to Perkins to Moran to now Conover. Conover just got the opportunity to do it for 3 years. And then even with running backs, they had to do Chase Lucas, TJ Green, Drake Anderson, now DeCarlos Brooks. And I fully believe from what I've seen that Jaheim, the Jet Brown Taylor, is fully primed for 1,500 to 2,000 yards. They don't want to put too much pressure on him. But after Game 5, he gets the tumbler, Eli Sanders. I think it's going to open up a lot of things.
So Garretson told me, that they're headed to Liberty Game 1 out in Las Vegas, and they want to keep the tradition going of scheduling a really good national level team to come to Chandler High. So week 4, they're looking at some options like St. John Bosco, Mater Dei, perhaps a team from Texas. Who would you like to see come in and take on the Wolves at Austin Field?
Oh, man, I would absolutely love to see Bosco come through. I would love to see IMG back here. I'd love to see Chandler flatten Gorman out here. I know Gorman's kind of losing its luster. I'd love to see one of those Texas teams. Just any of these nationally ranked and appreciated teams so that Blair Angulo can come out here and watch his teams get destroyed and flattened. I am all for that. I want all the smoke. I want Chandler to take on all comers. Whoever wants it, Eastside Catholic, they said they want that smoke. Hey, come on down one more time. They swear they run the desert. They got some talent there. Come bring it. Chandler wants it. Chandler's waiting. I think all these national max preps guys, they got to come out here and see what Chandler's really made of. Chandler stood toe-to-toe with IMG. They stood toe-to-toe with Corona Centennial. They played all those top teams in Nevada. So I would guess that, Aguano made Chandler a national name. Now it's time for Garretson to bring back a national champ.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And last question, how do you think Chandler fares in the new environment in which their playoff path could take them up against Saguaro, up against Corona, or not Corona Centennial, Peoria Centennial?
Chandler backs down from nobody. And I know that Centennial and Saguaro, they say the same thing, but Chandler's sick of the comparison. From what I understand, Chandler doesn't want to be compared to the 5A and 4A champs anymore. So I think that Chandler's fully embracing this. I think that Chandler loves it. They got to play the toughest teams in the state anyways. They got to play. I mean, they have to flatten Perry. They have to, get punched in the mouth by Highland and show everybody that they can be the last man standing. Saguaro, Centennial, they want to see them. I think that they want this. They really, really want this. And not to prove that they belong, but to prove that they're still at the top of the mountain.
All right, Chilly, well, I appreciate your time. Looking forward to getting together and hopefully next week and breaking down all of the success that the city of Chandler is having on the basketball court as we kick off Season 7 of the C-Town Rivals podcast.
No doubt, Starlord. Thanks for having me and keep bringing those stars to the state.
So I absolutely hate not being in the same room as Brett Quintyne and Chilly when we are recording the C-Town Rivals podcast, especially since we're relaunching the C-Town Rivals podcast as part of ArizonaSportsCast.com, our 7th season of this show, which is absolutely insane. But we had some huge news going down this last week as Rick Garretson was named the new head coach of Chandler High. And so, Brett, I just wanted to get your initial gut reaction take on this. And P.S., this is Brett Quintyne, by the way, who's been with the podcast all 7 years. Looking forward to another awesome year of content and working together. But I mean, what's your take on this Rick Garretson hire?
I like it. I really do. First thought is they stayed in-house, which definitely fits the Chandler culture. I mean, you figure the only guy I've known is Sean Aguano at the head, but he was promoted within. He developed a huge culture. His assistants have been very stable. You always know that it is a family feel on the Chandler sidelines. And when the job opened, I kicked around a few names in my head, and because Rick Garretson has the experience, I thought that he would be a great fit. I actually thought that Chandler might take a little bit more time because you figure now that they've reached the national level, they were probably looking at some outside candidates, but I think keeping it in-house does very good. And then I think the biggest thing is I don't sense any bickering or any jealousy amongst any of the other Chandler assistants. That's not a feel that I get. I feel that collectively they are happy that it's one of their own, and I think they're going to support their leader. So I think it's a great move, and he's got an offensive mind, and we know that the Wolves put up points at will.
So that's another thing that I want to talk to you about, because not only did you get here when his son, Daryl Garretson, I mean, the first Chandler game that you ever attended, his son led them on a huge comeback against Basha High School. You've watched him go from Daryl Garretson to Bryce Perkins to Mason Moran, and then 3 years of Jacob Conover. A lot of dads, when they get involved in coaching, are there to see their son through the process, and then they sort of move on after that. Well, Garretson didn't really take over the offense until the 2016 season. So for the last 3 years, it's been, him and Jacob Conover working some magic together. What about his development and work with some of the quarterbacks that we've seen over the years?
I think they respect it. I mean, he's a guy who is. I've always said while I've observed a couple of Chandler practices, I've never actually been deep in one. So we look at Aguano and we look at a guy like Mike Denny, guys who on the surface, on the sidelines, are just kind of game intense, and they're very happy-go-lucky type guys, but you know that when it's Monday through Thursday or even a Saturday morning, they are working hard, sleeves rolled up, working with these kids, and the results have just shown, especially obviously with Conover, because he has just been amazing. I mean, just think that he started as a sophomore and 3 straight titles and all the accolades that goes with it. So I think that he being Garretson, is going to continue that trend. I mean, he knows how to, I think that's the biggest thing, working with young quarterbacks. I mean, he's working with kids who are 15, 16 years old. I believe Mikey Teen is probably the next guy in line to be the quarterback for 2018. The fact that he's been in the system for a couple of years, he knows Garretson already. So I think it's a great fit.
Now, you also come at this from a little bit different of a perspective, because you have coached at the youth level, and then you have entrusted some of these coaches from around the city of Chandler to take that next step with some of the kids that you were working with from developmental stages. One of those being DeCarlos Brooks. You watched him come up through Chandler High School. You watched the season that he had last year. With the connections that you have and things that you've heard about these staff members at Chandler High as people, I personally really get the idea that there's a lot of mutual respect there. You've had to entrust kids to guys like Rick Garretson. Just as somebody who has worked in youth football, how do you feel about this?
He's great. He's just I'm going to say, when I say father figure, and you know how, you will know how teenagers are. Sometimes these kids don't want to necessarily listen to their own dad, but when a member of a coaching staff is saying the same thing, they tend to really embrace that concept or that skill. And so I think DeCarlos Brooks, perfect example that you mentioned, just having seen DeCarlos when he was 12 years old and now seeing what he was doing as an 18-year-old and coming up through the system. And what's great about the Chandler staff, they put these kids in a position to succeed. You figure, and we'll use Brooks as an example, yes, he ran all over the field as a freshman as a running back, but they knew about his athleticism, so they put him on defense and special teams as a sophomore, and then we saw him share the load as a junior, and then he was pretty much the sole guy. So I think the Chandler staff, and not to knock any other staff, not at all, but they know how to use their young men very wisely. They put them in great positions, and not so much the position on the field, but positions to succeed. And Garretson, as a leader with that, along with some of the other coaches, I mean, we even look at George Hawthorne, who obviously has moved on to Skyline, huge part in the success of all of these young men. And that's why I really feel strongly about Rick Garretson, because he embraces that family culture as good as anybody else in this district.
My last question is just the Chandler district as a whole, even going beyond the Chandler Unified School District to some of the other schools that we cover, whether that's Valley Christian, even Arizona College Prep, it just feels like the city of Chandler in general is very blessed to have very strong head coaches and coaching staffs. Whether you want to talk about, the fact that Preston Jones has been Perry's only head coach, what Chris McDonald was able to do last year, Mike Zadebski and all of his experience, Kirk Sundberg coming in at Valley Christian and really helping turn things around there. And then you look at other cities where there seems to be a lot of turnover, especially, Mesa, where the longest tenured head coach out there is maybe 3 years, where, the city of Gilbert has a couple of really great coaches. But, then you got a lot of turnover at schools like Mesquite. How crazy is it that just the city of Chandler in general has been able to have this sustained success, even though these are the teams that are beating up on each other?
It's awesome. I mean, it really is. I'm going to use a quote from Myron Bluford, the head coach at ACP. He said, "You don't leave the CUSD." I mean, and he expanded on that for a lot of reasons, because something we've mentioned over the last 5-10 minutes, just the family atmosphere, but also the city of Chandler embraces one another. I mean, they support one another. I mean, you look at the athletic director and the superintendent, Dr. Castile and Marcus Williams. When these two teams, when I say these two teams, whether it's Perry Chandler, Chandler Bash, or Hamilton, any combination, they're torn. They really want to see both teams win, and obviously in any game only one team can win. But a lot of it starts from the top down, and it starts at that district office over on Fry Road. And just in general, they hire good people. People in Chandler value both education and athletics, and not that other districts don't, but they really stress that, and I think that's why we see the longevity. And I mean, you look at, for the most part, when you do leave the CFD, we look at Sean Aguano. He's moved up to the college ranks. Unfortunately, Steve Bellis, he moved out to Utah, but landed on his feet. But in general, you don't just hop from the Chandler Unified School District to another district in state or take another job just for the sake of it. There's usually just a lot of longevity and support, and I think that's the biggest thing. Parents get behind a coach, and when a coach continues to lead, that says a lot about the neighborhoods, and all these neighborhoods make up the CUSD. And then, as you mentioned, Valley Christian and Seton Catholic as well. And even with Valley Christian, I think Kirk Sundberg's doing an amazing job. Jeff Rutledge is a guy who I think bridged a gap. He served a solid purpose, and he's a guy who still could be at that school as a teacher. He was teaching some finance and history. He was a lot more than just a football coach to many of those kids. So when he did move on, and that's a good thing we can say is these guys are moving on for the most part, not necessarily moving out. So it's a family-oriented town. It's an academic-oriented town, and certainly a sports-oriented town.
Well, I appreciate your time on this, Brett. I look forward to getting together and talking some basketball with you.
Absolutely, yes. It's hard to believe that this is season number 7 already, and I can tell you I've loved every minute of it.
that you have been waiting for. Chandler High head coach Rick Garretson, he accepted the job this last week, and the fine folks at Chandler High were nice enough to give me a call. Jim Culver, Larry Rother asked me to come down, meet with him, and I mean, his office was packed full of guys from Oregon, NAU, USC. The entire ASU staff was coming in. Memphis had stopped by, and so, it was really, really great of them to squeeze me in between all these assistant coaches as they get this Chandler High program up and running. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I will guide you through some of Rick Garretson's responses to my questions. Coming up, here is why Rick Garretson decided to take on the challenge of becoming the head coach at Chandler High School.
Feels great. Appreciate all the support from, Dr. Castile and Marcus Williams in the CUSD district office, and Larry here at the principal, Rother at Chandler, and obviously Jim Culver to get things going and allowing me to be a part of things, keeping things together and keeping the staff together and keeping the kids together to, make sure we move this thing forward in the direction it needs to go. When that domino effect came down, when that thing opened, I was pretty sure Herman was going to offer, Sean a job as a running backs coach and allow him to recruit, at the state of Arizona, which is a great move. And Sean will do, very, very well at that. Then all of a sudden now you come back to what's going to happen with Chandler football, and you've got the core of the coaches that have developed the program and, the action on the field and the success on the field. How are we going to keep that in place? Several staff members interviewed for the job. We wanted to keep it in-house. We would all work for each other, and ultimately, it came my way, and have the support of the staff and keeping the staff together and ultimately giving the kids direction, because for the last 3 weeks it's been pretty tough, when you don't have, per se, a head coach and a focal point. Same thing with the parents. And we talked about that this morning, about how, they were very patient, the parents and the kids, about letting the process work its way through, and then ultimately having the direction we're going, come down today and meeting with them. So it's we were going to do everything we could, to make sure that it stayed here. Ohana Makoa is a tradition here that's, you got to live it, and we have. Obviously, Coach Richardson and Coach Scott have been here, 18 and 22 years. Coach Murdoch has been here, I think, 18. You want to keep those guys on staff. The relationship they have with the players. It's like when we have college coaches coming in, they're college ready to go ahead and play no matter what level it is and what division it is, and that's not hard to let. You don't want to let that go. And I've got a great opportunity to go ahead and lead that direction, and it's onward and upward and moving forward.
I also had a chance to ask Rick Garretson about what he brings to the table, what he's sort of been able to accomplish at Chandler High School since 2010, and what his relationship with Sean Aguano has been like. They were obviously on the staff together under Jim Ewan, but he served in multiple capacities for Sean Aguano over the last 8 seasons. This was his response.
Coming from California, I had different ideas than the people that were here at Chandler when Coach Ewan brought me on in 2010, and then Sean got the head job in 2011. There were some things immediately that I told him he needed to do. One was invest in an end zone camera, because we need to film end zone practices, and we need to obviously film end zone copies in ball games. The other was we need to travel, and it's going to bring notoriety to the program, and we need to go out and play, people. And he took that and ran with it. He would usually come and talk to me about potential opponents, and the first year was, a thing in Mission Viejo, I think it was the Honor Bowl, and the opponents were Long Beach Poly, Corona Centennial, or St. John Bosco. And being served by the Trinity League, I was very familiar with St. John Bosco, and we chose them. We happened to win a national championship that year, with Josh Rosen as a quarterback. We had a nice lead for halftime, and that kind of changed as the game moved along, even though Josh was knocked out of the game with a broken collarbone. And it changed the culture of what happens here at Chandler. I think that was a huge reason we were able to get that first victory against Hamilton. And from that point forward, we were always looking to go out and play, top people in the country. And next thing you know, it's Valor Christian. And next year it's Bishop Gorman. The next year it's Corona Centennial. And the next year it's IMG, which was a home game. But it, putting ourselves out there, testing our kids early, which we always felt that would be a huge asset to us when it came to the end of the season. So, Sean would always come to me and talk about those type of things.
Rick Garretson also had plenty to say about the talent that he's surrounded with on a daily basis as an assistant and now as the head coach of Chandler High.
It's like anything, though, and Sean understood as well as I, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. Everybody has their own niche. Eric Richardson is the best speed trainer in the country. Okay,
right.
His resume proves that, right? Russell Scott is unbelievable, not only as a defensive backfield coach, but in the leadership program that we have here at Chandler that is an important facet of, Ohana and Makoa. Roger Murdoch, the development of his backers that's been here, the things that he's able to do. My staff that, Sean gave me the reins in 2016. And I got some pretty high octane guys in that offensive staff, right? And he let us run with it. And when we ran with it, we ran with it. And all of a sudden you're developing into a certain type of offense, that ends up being nationally known and does a lot of different things. And not too many people that throw for 4,000 or run for 4,000 in the same year, and that's pretty much what our numbers show. But having those guys, and it's never just a one-man show. It's a show that's a staff. And that staff has to work together and be able to make decisions in key moments, in key games, and that's all preparation. And there's nobody that prepares better than Chandler High School's football staff in the state of Arizona.
Rick Garretson talked also about continuing the Ohana-Makoa family culture of Chandler High School and how the coaches living out that culture translates to success for the student athletes.
It's always, we talk about doing the right thing, right? That's doing the right thing, obviously, on the field. That's doing the right thing off the field, in the classroom, on the football field, with your parents. It's a whole cultural effect in itself, but yet, and we actually have up outside the coach's office on the wall a plaque that states, the vision of Chandler football, Ohana and Makoa. And there's all the why, the how, the where, the when, and it's all specifically spelled out of how that happens. And, when you have those type of bullet points, and those kids are looking at that and they're driven with that every day, it leads to a lot of success, and a lot of development that allows them to do the things they want to do in their life.
Garretson is no stranger to coaching. He spent 16 years in California, where he also played high school and college football before serving as a coach at Servite High School. His experience also led him to meet many of the legendary Arizona high school coaches who blazed a trail for everybody having success in today's Arizona high school football landscape. Here's Rick talking about those experiences in California.
Well, I played there. I went to school there. And then went to San Diego State, from 74 to 78. And then didn't get involved in coaching, but then moved to Arizona. Had athletic shoe stores here that I was an original Nike team dealer in Arizona, and I got to know all the old-time icon coaches, Parker, Kiefer, Delvin Schutz here, Pat Farrell at St. Mary's. So got into that world, moved back to California, and then got into the coaching side of things. From back to 1989 to 2004, coached at Servite, which is the Trinity League. Our rivals modern day. That's a huge. That's you're playing at Angel Stadium in front of 20,000 people on nights like that. So it's a big deal, and knowing and learning how to coach. You had to learn how to coach in the Trinity League, and we didn't always have the field might be a little bit wilted towards our side as far as not having quite an unlevel playing field, so to speak, with us being at the lower level. But you learn how to coach, man. You had expectations, and that helps develop you not only as a teacher, as an educator, and as a football coach, but all those things combined.
Coach Garretson is stepping into the role of head coach at Chandler High School in the same year that the Arizona Interscholastic Association is moving toward an open division playoff, which will take the 8 best teams in the state and put them in a 3-week tournament at the end of the year to determine a true state champion. I asked Coach Garretson what Chandler High thought of the challenge of an open division championship.
I think it's outstanding. You want to play the best, we show that of how our preseason, is the places that we can go that we have to choose to go play, right? Otherwise, the AIA, I think, directs us with the Arizona stuff. But it's awesome, having the ability to go ahead and play, Jason at Saguaro, having the ability to play, Coach Taylor. We haven't played for a while, in his great program. And obviously the great program, Perry and all the 6A Pinnacle, Coach Zuki, those guys all do great jobs with their teams, and having, I guess, a 3-week tournament, so to speak, right? And ultimately ended up, seeing who's going to be on top. But that's where we think it's great.
Part of the mark you left on the program is opening up the idea of playing some of these teams that do well in their own regions, or are maybe used to traveling. I mean, I was out there when you guys played St. John Bosco, built an early lead, had a lot of success on offense. I was out there in Colorado when Sean Aguano told me that was the first time that a lot of these Chandler High kids had ever even gotten on a plane. I was here when 6'8", 400-pound offensive lineman walked onto Austin Field from IMG Academy. What's next? How do you expand upon that in a way that continues to foster into the culture of preparation and doesn't sort of flow into a almost like a vanity exercise, if you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, when you talk about the tradition and the culture, you want to go out and play the best. We've had a schedule that's been already placed on us this year, so we're working towards that. And we'll open our season at Liberty High School in Vegas. Will be game 1. We're trying to find a game 4. We're trying to bring somebody here so that we have 4 home games instead of 3 home games. Those things are usually looked ahead of time. Could there be a possibility of modern day, St. John Bosco, possibly Texas? These are things that have been discussed within amongst ourselves. But making sure that we always have a national type of game, lined up at the beginning of every season. Well, I'm not talking about the Geico Bowls or anything like that comes later in the season, but being able to play out-of-state opponents, because I think it displays the depth of Arizona football. That we had our success, and you've got Coach Taylor beating Gorman and beating St. Thomas Aquinas, and got Jason beating some nice teams at Saguaro, and going out and showing the nation that we play pretty darn good football in the state of Arizona.
One of the things I was most excited to ask Rick Garretson about is what the secret sauce is when it comes to coaching quarterbacks at Chandler High School. Not only did he have a chance to be around Brett Hundley, who is currently in the NFL, but also Mason Moran, his son, Daryl Garretson, who had a lot of success and played at Utah State and Oregon State, Bryce Perkins, who's currently at Virginia, and then 3-time state champion Jacob Conover. Here's what he had to say about working with quarterbacks at Chandler High and quarterbacks in the state of Arizona in general.
I've been fortunate. Obviously Brett was his own thing, which I really didn't deal because I just got here when Brett was here, right? But we got to get pretty close there at the end when he was a senior and have some direction there. Obviously Daryl, in his development. Bryce,
people saying Bryce wasn't a quarterback at all.
Exactly. And everybody's got their own, whether you're not this fast or you're not this tall, and Bryce, you're not a quarterback, and it's all these things that motivate and allow us to develop. And the one thing when Sean came to me in 212 and said, I want you to take quarterbacks, there were certain parameters that I told him. I go, I'll only do it if you let me, yada, 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 they're in control. And my quarterbacks are in control of everything, from protections to the calls to the communication, to knowing what's going on and making the proper reads and understanding the offense, which is how myself and our staff develops, and we'll develop same thing on defense, under my direction, that the kids take ownership of their, their side of the ball. And from the quarterback position, he's got the ball in his hands every time. And like I said, I've been fortunate. We're a lucky state because we've got, Mike Giovando, we've got Dan Minucci, we've got Rudy Carpenter, we've got Dennis Giles. Those are all top-notch quarterback coaches. And I've never been the guy that say, oh, you can't go to so-and-so, you're just, no, you got to embrace that because those guys know what they're doing.
Right.
And then once they get to us, how that develops, everything else of an offensive philosophy is that's how you play. They don't don't play for Mike Giovando or Dan Minucci. You play for Chandler High, and how that relates to the development. I mean, throwing's throwing. It's all about timing. It's all about proper reads. It's about getting the ball in your hand, and you can tell when you go watch Chandler at a 7-on-7 tournament. You can tell the Chandler quarterback's not back there looking around and just looking, is Jimmy open, is Johnny open? You can tell that it's all about timing. Things are up in the ball, and we want to find out what those kids can do. And we can learn that in the summertime, right? That how that's going to go ahead and propel that offense, because every offense every year is a little bit different than the year before. We've been very diversified. We've got smart kids. I've got really smart quarterbacks. And it just helps that when that opportunity comes for them, like you say, in college, are they ready for it? I don't know if anybody's ready for anything like that, because all of a sudden you're 19 or 18 years old, and you're playing with guys that are 21, 22 years old and bigger, faster. I mean, it's a whole nother world, right? They're prepared for that, both mentally and physically and technically. And, I've just been lucky. I've got some guys, and I got another guy this year too, that's going to be a very good player, Mikey Keene.
So now that Coach Garretson brought up Mikey Keene, who could be the next in a long line of great Chandler High quarterbacks, I asked him if he was worried about someone trying to fill the shoes of the most successful quarterback in Arizona high school football history, Jacob Conover.
Not at all. And I'll give you an example. Jake got hurt in the Highland game. I didn't know it. He played basically through it. It happened in the second quarter. And if we would have played on Saturday, I'm not so sure Jacob would have been able to play, okay, of what his injury was. And so that week, that was Thanksgiving week, right? So we had a Tuesday practice, we had a Wednesday practice, we had a Saturday practice. The Saturday practice was a regular up-tempo, normal. The Tuesdays and the Wednesdays was more kind of 7-on-7, things like that. And Mikey took all those reps. And it was like, we didn't miss a beat.
Interesting.
And I told, Jake and I talked, and I go, do I got to get Mikey ready for even in a 2-week period? And he says, no, Coach, but we're going to prepare him, right? And Jake was involved in that too, with the preparation. I know I had my brother attended, I think, our Saturday practice, and he's pretty knowledgeable about football. And he's like, who is that? I go, well, that's Mikey Keene. He's going, wow. And he had the respect from his teammates too, which is not easy as a sophomore, right? So if it came down to something along the lines where Mikey, let's say, had to play in that game, we would have been fine, even though he had never started a game. Mikey played some as a freshman. Mikey's a guy not afraid to put the ball downfield. He's probably he is the best on the run thrower I've had at Chandler. I've had some good ones, but he's very. I've never had a kid throw on the run like he does, and we'll have to see if we incorporate some of that stuff into the future offense, because you got to build things around what your kids do best.
Yeah.
But he's going to be a very good player. We got some young players coming up, from the freshman level and the JV level that are going to compete there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of talent here. Of how we're going to direct that. Same thing on defense. I want that defense to be as diversified as the offense. And Andrew Kanaki is a up and coming, really high level defensive coordinator. And taking those things together, we saw what he was able to do in the state championship game, doing some different things that they hadn't done before, and we saw the result. And look to go ahead and take that into a level that. We're going to be as diversified on defense as we are on offense.
And one thing Chandler High is hoping to continue from the Sean Aguano era into the Rick Garretson era is recruiting. They're hoping to get a lot of these kids onto college, and they're hoping that these kids succeed once they're in college. That's the most attractive thing you can have about a high school football program, is that it prepares kids for the next level. Chandler High has been notorious in recent years for not only getting kids to the next level, but for those kids actually showing out when they reach their different college football teams at various levels. I asked Rick Garretson about what it's going to take to keep that up and what Chandler High has been doing over the last few years that has helped them stand out amongst the rest.
Yeah, you don't sell kids, so to speak, a bad set of goods. You're honest with them. It's their decision to evaluate, and that's their job, right? It's our job to talk about their family life, their character, their work ethic. Their film is their film. Your film is your resume. But that goes back to the idea of competition, okay? I mean, we had a running back named T.J. Green that going into his junior year was the fourth-team tailback.
When he had success in the scrimmage against Centennial, I asked Chris Chick if he was going to play this year, and Chris Chick said probably not.
Exactly. And lo and behold, Chase goes down. Micah's banged up a little bit. Anthony had a little, was doing his thing, but we weren't getting quite what we needed there. And the next thing you know, here comes T.J. Green at Chaparral, and where'd that come from? And 1,800 yards later, whatever it was, he got his opportunity and he made it stick. So that's what I'm saying. When you have that culture, which starts in the weight room, which goes to the practice field, which goes how you warm up, that goes how you compete with ones versus ones. All these things, it's not just one thing, it's everything taken in. And now having the coaching staff. Chad Carpenter, unreal wide receivers coach. Played in the league, played at Wazoo, right? And a guy who's
not afraid to put Jacob Delatorre on the field over a D1 recruit if the production's there.
Correct. Colin Bottrell, what he brings to the table with his knowledge of working with Chad with the with the receiving corps. Eric Richardson and his knowledge of working with the running backs, because it's not just one running back getting every. I can't have the Carlos Brooks carrying 43 times against Perry. That was my bad. That just you don't see that in a championship game. Maybe you're going to see somebody go 29, 30, 31, but never a 43 in a mid-season game against Perry like last year, like with the Carlos, right? We have guys that know how to direct and know how to keep kids healthy and know how to technique them, so when they go on to play, I'll give you an example. Sean was the head coach at Team USA in 2016, I think it was, right? And we played Canada, and I got to be on his coaching staff, right? So I've got all the top players in the country. I got the Haskins kid, quarterback at Ohio State. They're all going to be, they were all seniors, right? And I got all the receiving corps. Everybody's going into USC, Notre Dame, Texas. They're all the who's who of the country, right? And I got N'Keal Harry, okay? And N'Keal Harry's there, and he is just nobody can cover him. And he's telling me, he's going, Coach, nobody knows how to get off press coverage. Nobody knows what a stem curl is. Nobody knows what a point curl is. It's all these different facets of the game that he took for granted, so to speak, because he was taught. But yet these other guys he's seeing, they don't have that. And you only know what you know, right? So that shows those kids when when DeCarlos goes watch Cal in their bowl practice, he's going, oh my God, Coach, they practice just like us. I just had Kerry Colbert from USC. That's exactly what he told me about. Wow, I was at one of your guys' spring practices last year, and that's a well-structured, well-organized machine out there. And we work hard at that. We know how to do it, and we know how to develop it. So when guys come in and they want to meet Malik or Tate or Gunner or David or whomever they're coming in for, right? It helps them, get the things that they want to come their way and preferably offers, and that's how it holds.
That brings us to the end of the first episode of the 7th season of the C-Town Rivals podcast. Special thank you to Chandler Principal Larry Rother and Chandler Athletic Director Jim Culver for reaching out to me and allowing me to come out, interview Rick Garretson. Best of luck to Rick Garretson in his new role as Chandler High's head football coach. It should definitely be interesting. Huge thank you to Chilly and Brett for jumping on the emergency podcast. We look forward to coming back next week, being in the same room together, talking some Chandler, Hamilton, Perry, Valley Christian, Seton Catholic, Castile basketball. It should be a good time. Remember to subscribe to ArizonaSportscast.com on iTunes. You'll get podcasts covering the Phoenix Suns, the Arizona Cardinals, Arizona high school football, the Pac-12. I have a daily podcast as well as the C-Town Rivals show. Really, really excited about this new venture. As always, you can find us at C-Town Rivals on Facebook or at C-Town Rivals on Twitter. If you are interested in partnering with the C-Town Rivals podcast, if you are a Chandler area business and you feel like our audience is someone that you would like to advertise to, please reach out to me, ralph.amsden@gmail. I would be more than happy to speak with you about how we can partner and how you can help us sustain this C-Town Rivals podcast and keep it going for athletes today, athletes tomorrow, and 7 seasons, man. I can't wait to get into this year, be part of ArizonaSportsCast.com. Looking forward to many more years of covering sports in the Chandler area. That's it for me, Ralph Amsden, co-host of the C-Town Rivals podcast. For Brett Quintyne and Chilly, we are out.